We want to begin with the markets. At one point, the Dow off more than 300 points, and it seems like maybe for some people, that's a sign that America is losing the trade war with China. But I'm here to tell you that I'm not worried because we're actually winning in so many different ways now. What a lot of people, particularly financial television, doesn't mention is that China is dealing with some very serious issues, including right now that country pumping in billions of dollars to prop up their economy. In fact, $60 billion this month alone. They're also dealing with the plunging stock market, massive mounting debt that's swamping their GDP. And finally, they're facing rapidly declining foreign reserves, down $1 trillion, $1 trillion with the T, since their 2014 high. Here to discuss with me, Gordon Chang, The Coming Collapse of China author, Peter Morici, former U.S. International Trade Chief, Hal Lambert, Point Bridge Capital founder, Veronique, Rugy, Mercatus Center Senior Research Fellow. Gordon, let me start with you. You know, when Americans see, oh, the Dow is off 300 points, we're losing. Shenzhen is off 49% from their all-time high a couple of years ago. And this year, down 17 or 18%. And the reason I point that one out, that's where China's focus, right? That's China 2025. That's their key to the future. And that index has gotten crushed.
Yeah, well, today it was down 5.3%. The Shanghai Composite was down 3.8. It's broken below the 3,000 level. It is the worst performing major stock index in the world today, down 12%. China's got some real problems that you just talked about. And, you know, people are saying in China right now that those stocks, which have plunged a lot over the last several weeks, have a lot more to go. Now,
does this put any pressure on China authorities? You know, we always sort of get the feeling that, I mean, I read the People's Daily headline today, and it felt like the Chinese government, at least through their media, trying to calm the folks there and reassure them of their strength. It didn't really read convincingly to me, but you could see the attempt.
Yeah, a lot of people say, look, we can't win this trade war because Donald Trump has elections and Xi Jinping, the Chinese ruler, doesn't. But we know that Xi Jinping is under a lot of pressure. There were reports, for instance, under ZTE, the embattled Chinese telecom equipment manufacturer. People in China were saying that if Trump didn't give ZTE sanctions relief, that maybe Xi Jinping could lose his position. So we know that the trade is even more important to Xi than ZTE because this is a broad-based concern and it affects all elements of the Chinese economy. So right now, we're in a much better position than the Chinese.
Peter, how do we win the trade war?
Well, I think that we're not playing it as effectively as we could, all these advantages notwithstanding. We're basically applying economic sanctions to get a regime change. I don't mean different leaders, I mean a change in their policy perspective fundamentally. And to do that, what we've learned from sanctions historically is you've got to get your allies in line so the target can't go around you. And because of the kerfuffle over steel tariffs and aluminum tariffs, it's very difficult to get the Europeans to support us, the Canadians, the Japanese, and so forth. That's the first thing. The second thing, you should structure what you do in a way that's hard for them to hit back. And tariffs might not be the best way to do that. It might be, as I've suggested, through some sort of quota system where the more they buy from us, then the more quotas we'll issue to buy from them, something of that nature. So, you know, my feeling is that they haven't thought through strategically where they want this to end and what are the best weapons to use. Certainly we have advantages, but let's not squander them.
Of course, Veronique, you think it's a bad idea to begin with.
Well, I think that there are no losers, there are no winners in a trade war. So even if we can say, oh, you know, the Chinese have a lot to lose, well, we too have a lot to lose. And I find it actually quite remarkable that the goal of this president is to actually make the Chinese government treat their people better. But what I don't find remarkable is how he's doing it by taking hostages the American consumers, and that includes American manufacturers who are buying steel and aluminum. And by the way, a lot of goods that manufacturers are buying from China to make their goods. And so I think there's just like the notion that, oh, just because the Chinese market is doing worse, which I'm sure Gordon is entirely right. You know, it means it's great news for the U.S. It's bad news for the U.S. And by the way, this uncertainty that is going through and has been going on for a long time, a lot of experts are calculating that it's wiping out, in terms of investment and capital investment and expenses, the benefits of the tax reform And that's a shame.
Hal, let me get your thoughts on this. Again, it's, we've seen the markets come off the lows of the session the last several sessions. Obviously, the Dow's under pressure. By the same token, the Russell 2000 made another all-time high today, suggesting that people are confident about the domestic economy. And there are obviously individual sectors that continue to do very well. Amazon and Netflix through the roof today as well.
Well, look, Charles, this is the exact right time to take on China. We may never get this opportunity again. We have the right person in the White House. He's unpredictable. The Chinese don't know what to do. He's doing it because of his policies, from a position of unprecedented economic strength. And look, the markets are telling us that we're winning. The Chinese stock market just hit a 2-year low. We're up 32% over the last 2 years. So the markets are already saying that we're winning this trade war. And President Trump just played the Trump card on China. He put tariffs at a size that's greater than what they buy from us. So they can't do a tit for tat anymore. They're going to have to do something different. And if they're going to escalate it, I don't know what they're going to do to escalate it, but I think they ought to think about it very carefully, because they can't win this trade war right now.